Hey, how are y'all doing today? This is grade card time. So we're going to talk about every SEC team all the way from Alabama alphabetically to Vanderbilt. And we're just going to give them a grade on how this season played out. Now, guys, what I'm doing here is I'm basically going through the schedule here. Vegas's preseason expectations of these teams, how these teams how they did according to those expectations, and all things considered, I'm giving them an overall grade. So let's not waste any time. Let's get right to Alabama. Alabama, they were projected by Vegas to win 9.5 games. They won 9 games. Not really far off what Vegas had them at, but what bothered Alabama fans was the fact that who they lost to, right? They didn't lose to LSU, and they didn't lose to Georgia to pick up those 2 additional losses. As far as Tennessee was concerned, they lost to Tennessee, but Tennessee was okay. But it was Vanderbilt, it was Oklahoma. Oklahoma was really, really bad this year. So, they ended up 9-3, and in the regular season. And they did. There was some moments, this season. Alabama had some good moments, going to Death Valley, blasting LSU, beating Georgia at home. So, but overall, it was not a successful season in Tuscaloosa. It was Kalen DeBoer's first year as head coach at Alabama. And I knew they were going to have kind of a setback because Jalen Milroe is not his prototypical quarterback. I think better days are ahead of Alabama when he gets his quarterback in that can run his offense. Alabama's going to be okay. But I'm going to give Alabama a B-. And that's probably a lot higher than most people would give, but first-year head coach, I thought he did okay. So second team I want to get to here is Arkansas. Arkansas was projected to win 4.5 games, and I'll be the first to tell you I thought they were going to be terrible. But Bobby Petrino, the new offensive coordinator, Taylon Green, the new quarterback that came in, they made this team respectable and in a stingy, defense they had at times. The defense played well at times. I know they shut down my Tennessee Vols. Big win over Tennessee's a highlight, but this team could have been so much better if they could have just took care of the football and limited penalties. Should have beat, at the time, a top 20 Oklahoma State team. They blew that game, really blew the game against Texas A&M. Could have even beat Missouri. So really, in my opinion, this Arkansas team was an 8-win team, but they just couldn't put it all together. But the fact that they were projected to win 4.5 games, huge win over a top 5 Tennessee team this season. So I'm going to give Arkansas a B. I mean, I think, and they actually won their bowl game too. So Arkansas, a B grade for this season. Now, the third team I'm going to talk about is Auburn. This is a team that really underperformed, honestly. Auburn was projected to win 7.5 games, and I thought they would win 8 games this year. But, I mean, you're talking about a team that just could not close a game out. Blew a game against Oklahoma at home, a game they 1,000% should have won. Blew a game at Missouri that they were up double digits in the fourth quarter. Hugh Freeze kept Peyton Thorne. He should have got him another quarterback. He did not do that, and it really, really cost them. They were able to run the ball pretty effectively, Auburn was. Pretty good defense, but quarterback play, in my opinion, was the big difference with this team. 5 wins at Auburn is not acceptable, and they should have been better this year. They actually had a worse record this year. So I'm going to give Auburn a D grade this year. Bad season on the Plains. If Hugh Freeze wants to keep his job next year, he had better win more than 5 games. I would think at the minimum 7 or 8 if he wants to keep his job. The 4th team, Florida. Now, this is a team that, man, they overperformed. In the preseason, we were talking about how hard that schedule was they got. It was just a murderer's row schedule. There was a period there where they played like 5 opponents that was inside the top 25. And this team got off to a rough start. They got just absolutely dominated by Miami. Lost a heartbreaker in Knoxville in overtime to Tennessee. But this team turned it around after the Georgia game. DJ Lagway. And here's the thing. DJ Lagway did not put up like video game numbers or anything. But this team rallied around DJ Lagway. Played much better when he was the quarterback. We should give Florida fans a lot of optimism in 2025. But this team, they were projected to win 4.5 games. They won 7 regular season games. They won their bowl game as well, but I'm only counting the regular season. I thought they did a great job. And I thought the future's very, very bright there, especially with DJ Lagway as their quarterback. Billy Napier, I think, did a phenomenal job. I'm going to give Florida, I'm going to give them an A. With that schedule to win 7 games and have their starting quarterback Graham Mertz go down in the season, I'm going to give Florida an A grade. I think they're deserving of it. The next team's Georgia. This is a team that, even though they won the SEC, I guarantee if you talk to Georgia fans, it was not a good season, because this fan base, they demand excellence. They did lose 2 regular season games. The one at Alabama is really nothing to hang your hat on, because there's not many teams that go into Tuscaloosa and win. But the head scratcher was the win against the game against Ole Miss, in which they just got obliterated, and Georgia never really gets beat like that, and they did. They lose in the playoffs as well to Notre Dame, but they did win the SEC. They beat Texas twice, beat Tennessee, they beat Clemson. It was still a pretty successful season for Kirby, in my opinion. I'm going to give Georgia a B grade. The thing that hurt Georgia this year is what I said in the preseason. No really promising wide receiver core like they'd had in the past with Ladd McConkey, Brock Bowers. This year, you had Arian Smith and a bunch of guys that just could not catch the football and were not consistent, and that, to me, and a running game that was not as good as it's been in the past either. So I think Georgia's going to get that turned around, especially with the way they recruit and the way they do things there. But I would give Georgia a B. Now, Kentucky is my next team I want to talk about. Kentucky was projected to win 6.5 games, and they very much underperformed. You can almost pencil Kentucky into a bowl game every single year in college football, and this year they weren't even close. They were highlighted. They did have one good game where they went to Ole Miss and won. That's astounding to me that they won that game, but they found a way to do it. But they lost every other SEC game in the regular season. It started off really bad in a humiliating loss to South Carolina, and just the season never did get on the track, on the right path. But I'm going to give Kentucky a D-, 4 wins, and this was a team that had a really good defense. They had some transfers coming in. I think Dumas Johnson and some guys that they had some good cornerback play. And defense was not the issue. It was offensive. Offensively, the key, Barron and Key, they just couldn't get the ball to them. And the quarterback that came in was a huge bust. Offensive line couldn't block. They did play hard at times. Played Tennessee pretty well, but just a bad season for Kentucky. I'm really surprised they actually kept Mark Stoops. But I'm giving Kentucky a D- grade for this season. LSU is the next team I want to talk about. Projected to win 9 games this season, and I really thought they were going to be the sleeper team in the SEC. Not because I thought they were the best team in the SEC. I just thought the schedule was set up really nice for LSU. But they got off to a bad start, losing to a very average USC team, and that really put them behind the 8 ball. They did have some really good wins. At South Carolina, beat Ole Miss at home, but they got just absolutely curb stomped by Alabama, and just I don't know. There were some just losses for LSU. Just you scratch your head on it. You don't understand why they played the way they did. They got absolutely obliterated by Alabama at home. LSU always plays good at home, and so they lost at Texas A&M too. Just didn't show up in the second half in that game as well. But they only had 8 wins, and I think they underperformed this year. I had this team winning like 10 or 11 games, 8 wins. They should have won more, and the schedule worked out really nice for them. They had all their big games after bye weeks and whatnot. It was a pretty decent schedule in that regard. Things were set up nicely, and they just didn't get it done. I think Brian Kelly, the natives in Louisiana, are kind of getting a little restless with him. I'm going to give LSU a C. Mississippi State's the next team, and poor old Mississippi State, man, they were behind the 8 ball before the season even started. Dude, they just did not have the roster to compete in the SEC, and they had a brutal schedule. And when I did their preseason prediction, Arizona State was just an absolutely awful team the year before. Well, this is a college football playoff team. This year they almost beat Texas. So they like the second game of the year they went to Arizona State. They played them pretty good. But they did not win one SEC game. They only had 2 overall wins. Went 2-10. Got absolutely curb stomped by Arkansas. But, they were competitive in most of their games for the most part. They kept it within a couple scores against Georgia. They lost like 17 to 20 points to Tennessee and some other teams. So they played competitive. I think they will be better for sure next year. I thought they played hard. And his first year for Mississippi State, I'm going to give Mississippi State a C because they were only projected, I think, to win 4 games this season anyway. And with that schedule, I think it was much harder than what people thought it was going to be. So I'm going to give Mississippi State a C grade. Missouri is the next team I want to talk about. Missouri was projected to win 9.5 games. Just could not get it going. I think they really missed Dylan Schrader. Defensively, they weren't as good as they were the year before, even though defensively they weren't bad. But Brady Cook really struggled, this year compared to last year. And Luther Burden didn't have the year that he normally has. Theo Weiss as well. But they did still end up winning 9 games. But this was the easiest schedule in the SEC too. I think they underperformed. And I'm gonna give Missouri a C+. I mean, you win 9 games at Missouri, that's pretty darn good. But they lost to they had a really bad loss to Texas A&M. Did not show up at all at Alabama, even though Brady Cook was injured. This didn't show up to play at all in that game. Really, the only good wins, the best wins. This is how easy Missouri's schedule was. The only good wins they had were Vanderbilt and Arkansas. That was the best teams that they beat. So, I'm going to give Missouri a C+ on this season. Much tougher schedule. They would have not even sniffed 8 wins, or 9 wins. I mean, the next team I want to talk about is Oklahoma. Now, this was the team that I said was the most overrated of all the SEC teams. Even though they didn't have high expectations, they were at 7.5 wins. That's what Vegas had them at before in the preseason. They ended up getting 6 wins. But I knew this team, with that offensive line they had and a pretty young quarterback in Jackson Arnold, that they would struggle. And, this was a bad season for Oklahoma. I'm going to give Oklahoma a D grade. They did have a good win against Alabama at home. They did go to Auburn and win that game, but they just got beat by their biggest rival, Texas. This got absolutely curb stomped. South Carolina came to their house, obliterated them. It was a bad year for Brent Venables. And I really believe him beating Alabama saved his job. So, but anyway, I'm going to give Oklahoma a D, or a D-. What I can't really, a D. Oklahoma a D grade. All right, now the next team's Ole Miss. This was a team that had the best transfer portal class in the country coming in. They picked up Walter Nolan, picked up, I can't think of the dude's name, but he was from South Carolina, receiver, got some playmakers out of the portal, and they were stacked. Harris and the other dude that was the receiver, 2 guys that put up video game-like numbers, Jackson Dart. He was back at quarterback, veteran quarterback. He broke all kinds of records this year, but they just couldn't get the job done. They were slated to win 9.5 games by Vegas. They actually won 9 games. The highlights of this season were killing Georgia at home. That's a great victory. Going to South Carolina and dominating a 9-win South Carolina team, but they also had really bad losses. Lost to the worst team in the SEC at home in Kentucky, and then Florida. All they had to do was beat Florida, and they were in the college football playoffs. They dropped that game, so they did not perform to the expectation. I thought this was at least a 10-win team. They did not get the job done. I'm going to give Ole Miss a C grade. They just didn't get the job done, and they could have done much better. The next team is South Carolina. Now, this is a team that overperformed a ton. I really didn't think this team would do anything this year, but they got the job done. Lenore Sellers, what an amazing quarterback he is, playmaker. This team was only slated to win 5.5 games, and they won 9 games. And they had a tough schedule. Beat Missouri. They hadn't beat Missouri in a long time. Beat Clemson at Clemson. And, really the only bad loss that South Carolina had this year was Ole Miss, honestly. They just didn't really show up for that game, but all the other games they had a chance to win. I mean, that game against LSU, it was stolen from them. They were cheated in that game. They should have had a 10-win season. So South Carolina really came to play this year. I cannot get over Stewart and the Kennard. Those defensive ends were just nasty. They played so well this year. Lenore Sellers played so well. And their running back, I can't think of his name right now. Rocket Sanders, he was great as well. So, man, South Carolina, they did drop the bowl game to Illinois. It was a close game, but 9 wins in the regular season. I think any South Carolina fan would take that. I'm giving South Carolina an A+ grade. The next team is Tennessee. Now, I was really surprised that Vegas only had us slated at 8.5 wins. I thought we were a better team than that, and ultimately we were. We won 10 games. We kind of got an easy schedule. Now, it wasn't Missouri easy, but we kind of had an easy schedule. I mean, really, the best wins we had on this schedule were against Alabama and Florida. Florida was kind of down this year, at least the first half of the year. Alabama was a good victory, but not a lot of big wins. But we took care of business for the most part. The really one bad loss was Arkansas that I just can't get over. I don't know how we lost to Arkansas. A lot of bad play calling, a lot of bad offensive line play in that game. But we still got into the college football playoffs, doing that with a freshman quarterback in Nico Iamaleava. And we actually won 10 games, a game and a half over what they slated us at. I thought we had a pretty good year. I'm going to give Tennessee a B+. Defense played well, good running game, and I think winning 10 games in the SEC is a pretty good season for Tennessee. The next team's Texas. Texas kind of got an easy schedule too. Texas did not play a hard schedule this year. And I'll just tell you, the best wins they had on their schedule this year in the regular season was Michigan, Texas A&M. They did end up winning 11 regular season games. Vegas had them at 10.5 total. So they did go over the total. They go to the SEC championship game. They lose to Georgia. They lost to Georgia twice during the regular season, and obviously they lost to Ohio State in the playoffs. I still think Texas had a pretty good year. They lost some running backs in the preseason that really hurt them. But I think Quinn Ewers did a good job. Arch Manning did a good job when he came in. Pretty good year. You go to the playoffs, you win 11 games. I think I'm going to give Texas a B grade. All that NIL money at Texas is really helping them. A&M, another team that's got a lot of NIL money. Texas A&M, they were projected to win 8.5 games. They actually won 8 games. At this team at one point in the season was really humming. I thought they would be better offensively with Connor Wegman coming back at quarterback. He did not finish the season. They handed that over to a freshman and Marcel Reed, and it team started to figure him out at the end of the year. So offensively they struggled, but they did have some good wins this season. They beat LSU, they beat Missouri. Some of the bad losses, though, that really kept them out of the college football playoffs and playing in the SEC championship was the loss at Auburn. They got killed by South Carolina. So they did not meet expectations, but it was a first-year head coach that came in over from Duke. Can't think of his name on top of my head, but thought he did a decent job. I'm going to give Texas A&M a B-. Always hard for a first-year head coach to have a great year. It's not his players. He's having to get acclimated to the team and everything. 8 wins. They had a pretty darn tough schedule. Had to close the season with Texas. Had some really, really tough games this year, did Texas. They actually had to start the year off playing Notre Dame. Notre Dame's playing in the national championship today. So I'm going to give Texas A&M a B-. And here's another team, Vanderbilt. that very much overperformed. I mean, Vegas had them slated at winning 3 games this season. They won 6 regular season games, and then they won their bowl game too. Beat Alabama. I think that's like the first time they beat Alabama in like over 40 years. Went to Auburn and beat Auburn. The only bad loss on Vanderbilt's schedule was Georgia State. That was really the only bad loss. Other than that, they were competitive, played hard, had Missouri in overtime, jumped out 14-0 on Tennessee. They just played amazing football. Diego Pavia was the biggest pickup, honestly, in the portal for any SEC team. You got to give Clark Lea a lot of good credit. I mean, his team played so hard. They were so competitive in every single football game. Went to Kentucky, beat Kentucky. I mean, this Vanderbilt team overperformed so much. I'm going to give Vanderbilt the same grade I gave South Carolina. I'm giving them an A+. You go 3 wins over what they had you slotted to make. That's an amazing season. But anyway, guys, I know that's a lot to talk about, but that is my grade card. A to Z or whatever it is, all the way through alphabetically through the SEC, going through 16 SEC teams, and that's the grade I gave them. Let me know your thoughts. Am I way off on my grade? Did I miss something? Let me know. I'll talk to you guys later.